You gotta think about it. Think about it.
Okay, Atari, let's see your best pitch.
You're out, Rose!
The Atari video computer system is 20 cartridges with 1,300 game variations you play on your own TV set.
You can't keep me in here, Atari.
Don't listen tonight. Play it.
Hey guys and girls, I hope you are all doing well. We are back. The Retro Edcast, the podcast that isn't a podcast, episode 7, covering a random set of topics today. We're going to be talking about lumberjacks, cinema viewing figures, touching a little bit on streaming as well. I say the games, or more the game that I've been playing and have recently completed. Talk a bit about that. I spoke about it a little bit on a previous episode. What else? We will be talking about an Apple TV series that I started to watch. I watched the first series, put it down, and then I started up again, and crunched through a couple of those. So we'll talk about that, and then a little bit of music at the end. So yes, indeed, I have been summoning my inner lumberjack. Things have got a little crazy out in the garden. And I say crazy, I'm used to things being very tranquil and calm and standard. So crazy to me probably isn't that crazy to most of you. But the backstory, and there's no foxes, there's no badgers involved in this. There's not much of an update, I don't think, in terms of Badgergate. There hasn't been any sightings of it. There was a massive turd that we kind of found down the alleyway. Looks more human size, so maybe one of the neighbours has been sleepwalking. Note to self: make sure neighbour does not listen to this podcast, otherwise be an extreme trouble. It may be badger poo. Who knows? But it did look rather, well, it still looks pretty XL, extra large. So it's it is where it is, and I won't be going down the alley until someone else has moved it, or the part of time and nature have eroded it away. It's probably this time of year, it's probably going to go white before it disappears. But anyway, moving adjacent to the alleyway into my garden, the place I'm in, it's nothing fancy. It's kind of a terraced house, 60s build, and back in the day, the coal used to get delivered around the back of the house. This is where the alleyway comes in, and every 3 houses have like a bit of an area at the back where the coal got put in, and presumably people used to then kind of cart it into the house. A bit of a no man's land, but also to establish that perimeter. Decades and decades ago, they put these like whacking great trees up that have grown and grown and grown, and ever since we've been here, we've been moaning at the council to say, look, you need to cut these back. Originally they're overhanging bits of the garden. Now they really overhang the garden and the shed, nearing some of the houses, because they literally go all the way along the street. There's there's a few hundred houses if you go all the way up the road. So the council did what they did. They took away a bit of wood, and then me trying to be the Dave Angel eco warrior that I think I am, but I'm definitely not, was like, why don't you leave some of these logs behind, and maybe I'll put them to good use. We'll get them in the open fire in the front room. We'll save a few pennies, because already then the energy prices were up and up and up, and I was thinking this would be quite a good thing to do. So they were like, you sure, mate? And like a complete dickhead, I was just like, yeah, fine. So they basically left a whole God knows how many logs, or logs right into trees. They're just stacked up in my garden, but like a huge amount. This was a good probably 2 years ago, maybe 2 and a bit years ago, and they have just stayed there ever since. I reckon a couple of years ago. So this year, with the onset of the cold, horrible winter, and working from home mainly, and just feeling bloody chilly all the time, reluctant to reach out for the heating controls, albeit I do, and that normally causes other issues, because like everything, it's connected to the bloody Wi-Fi. So yeah, that's a separate little issuette. So I thought, right, let's tackle these logs. And they've been out in the open, so they're bloody, and then they're soaking wet. Some of them are a bit rotty, grotty. So I thought, what do I need? So the first thing I conjured up, I thought, well, I'm going to get myself a good old log rack, which I can put the logs in. So got that. Instructions were like freaking abysmal. It was just like, I might as well just make it up, get like a -1 year old to scribble on a bit of paper and use those. That would have been better than what I was provided with. So the 5,000 or so Amazon reviewers that said it was great, clearly they've either been sent some decent instructions, or they're just all liars, or they're paid by the company to whack those reviews up to positivity heaven. But anyway, this thing got built. Of course, none of the logs, because they're so friggin' massive, would fit on this thing. So I'm then like, okay, what else do I need? So this is where I jumped the chainsaw bit. So I then went and started researching chainsaws, and I was just like, I don't really want to I'm crap with like petrol stuff and real man stuff. Probably shouldn't have really got a chainsaw in the first place. So I was like, I'm going to get a petrol one, but these electric ones look pretty decent. Did some research, got one of them. So this thing turns up. It's a bit of a beast to pull together, because you have to put the chain around the end of the saw. There's a bit of Meccano, to be honest. So I haven't fired it up. Hopefully there'll be no real problems when I do. But I think I've kind of put it together. And then I was just like, you can't go cutting bits of wood on the ground. Once this thing kind of kicks, the chainsaw kicks back. I'm talking like this could very well be my last podcast. Not due to lack of enthusiasm of carrying them on, because I absolutely do enjoy doing them, but more to do with the fact that an injury could be sustained that's related to this chainsaw log rack business. So anyway, the chainsaw's ready. I then think, okay, I need something to cut the logs on. So I then went and bought I'm just going to look at the proper like terminology, because most of this stuff was on Amazon. Where else would I get something from? So it's the Oregon Steel Log Sawhorse, foldable and adjustable. The instructions from the first ones were crap. These were effing crap. It was ridiculous. None of the parts were that visible on the instructions, that looked like they've been photocopied like 5,000 times. And they were just, you couldn't see the dimensions, you couldn't see any of the numbers. So I was literally doing it off of the photo on Amazon. And then I should have dug into the reviews, because to be fair, good reviews for once it's built, but the gripes were instructions are just like not instructions. But anyway, the Oregon Steel Horse, or the Steel Log Sawhorse, that'd be like a Trojan horse. That thing was built. So now we have a few other little conundrums. I was just like, okay, if I'm cutting through this thing, how should I really do it? I watched some YouTube, because where else would one turn to for advice? And every single picture. This is a bit of a random thing, clearly clickbait. But if you Google or you look up on YouTube like cutting logs with chainsaws or whatever, you will get inundated with some big boobioed, big buttocked, almost like supermodels cutting logs. I'm hesitating because those pictures are coming back into my mind. It was absolutely outrageous, some of these, and that just slowed the whole thing down, because it took me a good 30 minutes 2 minutes to cut through that stuff and then move on to some real professionals cutting the woods. And by the professionals, I mean the lumberjacks from some of those serious forests that you see in the States and or in Canada. And they had loads of, even the people that look like they've done it a million times, they certainly were wearing the old the safety helmets. So that then prompted me to get the Oregon Yukon chainsaw safety helmet with the protective ear muff and mesh visor. The ear muffs are integrated, so you don't need to wear them separately, and this thing's going to be loud. The mesh visor, obviously, so I can see but not be hit and potentially pierced by bits of wood, which is good. I've then got some left hand protection leather gloves. And this is because, and I read this a few times, because I'm right-handed, and so therefore if it kind of slips, it's more likely to slip onto my left hand. The thing itself does have a bit of a safety button, so if I was to drop it or release, then it should stop. But how quickly will that stop? Is it instantaneous? Is it still going to be running? I'm not entirely sure. So I got the medium ones. If anyone's interested, hit me up. But if you need the specific reference, it's the 9130 at 5M. But yeah, a dainty pair. So I've got them on the go. Some of the people, but not all, had these like the trousers, which you wear. They look a bit like cowboy trousers. You wear them over your jeans or whatever you're sporting outside. And they must have some heavy duty material to avoid you chopping your legs off. So I thought I'll have a quick look at them, but was quickly put off by the fact that they were, I think, about 70 quid. So the old, it's getting crazy. I might as well get the council back in play, or play the council's contractor on a private basis to do this stuff for me. The costs are like starting to mount up. So anyway, I bypassed that. Set the chainsaw up. The chainsaw then needs some chainsaw lube and oil, which doesn't bloody come with the chainsaw. So I picked that up. I then went out in the garden and put a log onto the steel log sawhorse, and thought, look, this thing could, like, it's on a flat surface, but if it was going to tilt, it was going to come off. So I've got some like bungee cords. So I've spent a few hundred quid on this ridiculous project, of which I've done absolutely nothing. The missus looks out and she's just like, those logs are still there. Everything okay? I'm like, yeah. So this weekend we will be, like I say, summoning the inner lumberjack. If I update in the next one, if I'm here to update, that, or at least my upper torso, my vocal cords and voice box are still intact. So I can't speak that much for my lower torso and anything that isn't vital. And if you don't hear of me at all, then yeah, it's either a gap between the podcasts or that is the end. But yeah, that's a bit about my exploits in the garden. And I think the footnote for this is I'm fucking awful at all things DIY. So this is a bit of a risk, and the added pressure is because we are kind of a bit terraced. Neighbours will be looking out the window as soon as this thing fires up, and then I feel like I'm in the middle of a gladiator arena. And the pressure's on. Myself and the boy have been hitting up the local cinema more and more, particularly over the last couple of years. He's got quite into it. It's an easy little drive. It's about 10 minutes down an A road. Part of the Basildon Festival leisure park. So there's bowling, there's loads of other like eateries and places to check out. So it's a good place. He enjoys it. It's got me really into Mountain Dew. Complete sidetrack. Never had Mountain Dew before, and then one day I was just like, I think the marketing kind of just, I don't know, took over my little brain, and before I knew it, I was supping on the old Mountain Dew, watching, I think it was the Dead Reckoning Part 1. It was quite a milestone drinking event. Probably more bowled over. The film was good, but more bowled over by the Mountain Dew than the Tom Cruisery of it all. But since then, trying to find Mountain Dew at a good price. B&M Bargains for those folks in the UK is a safe haven for those. But just don't come to the one in Southend, because that lot is all for me. But loving the Mountain Dew. But when we go in there's so many screens. This place has been there a while, but they're never that full up. And we normally book a bit in advance, and there's and you think, okay, it's going to be more people surely would have booked or maybe turn up on the day, but you get there and it's not great. And it got me being a bit of a geek, thinking, okay, what are the old cinema viewing figures like? And I'd come across a site called, and it's all things statistics, hence the name. Is statista.com, and it covers like stats for pretty much everything. It is, if you want to look at, I think, the broader array of stuff, you have to pay for it, and it's more. I think it's more for businesses, because out of curiosity, I looked at the subscription prices, and they are like crazy. However, there's a lot of free bits of information there. It's not always current, or it might just be a subset of what you're after. But I just popped in like cinema attendance, and it kind of peaked 2018. So there was 100 in the UK. I'm talking to there's 177 million cinema admissions in that year. It kind of peaked. It dropped a little bit to 176 in 2019, and then of course the pandemic kicks in 2020. It plummets to, I round it up marginally to 44 million, and since then it's crept up a little bit year on year. Probably the most so was between 21 and 22. It kind of went up to 117. So that's still, if you think that peak was the 177, it's still quite a bit under. And then 22 to 23, a little nominal chink, a little bit of an increase, but not much. We don't have stats for 2024 because we're not paying a silly amount if they are available. But it wouldn't be full year anyway because we're only in November. So, and I don't have the other numbers, but I started to look at the US numbers, and it felt like that their bounce back was even worse than the UK. And that it obviously dropped around COVID, but then coming up, it was way off proportionally. Obviously, overall, in terms of millions, there's far more people attending, cinema viewings in the US and UK for obvious reasons. But the proportion of people bouncing back after COVID it seems to be less than the UK. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but I think in terms of why the cinema viewings have gone down, and this is probably where a bit of debate, bit of thoughts in the comments if anyone can be asked, because it's a bit of a nerdy topic. Let's be honest. Let's not a jib at your enthusiasm, because loads of people comment, but this is just a bit of a weird thing to perhaps me to be focusing on. But it's niggling my mind, but on my mind. But when you look at the timing as well, the COVID, those streaming subscriptions, people were all over it in COVID, so surely that's dented the cinema viewings a little bit thereafter. But then I got thinking about, okay, well, you do read in the papers on the websites that certain folk, and I hear it's anecdotally because I know I've done it. I was at a point where I subscribed to all of the services, most of the services, the Netflix and the Amazons and the Now TV, because we don't have Sky, so Now TV is a good way of doing that stuff, and Disney and blah blah blah, Apple TV. So now we're a bit more cautious. We crop rotate, but I do read a lot about people moving away from particularly the likes of Netflix, as there's been price increases. So that then got me looking at some of the stats for the streaming services, and most of those streaming services, they peaked in 2022. Then they've started to come down, with the exception of Disney. Disney's gone up a little bit, and I think the reason for that is that Disney started after the other ones. It was as a service, so therefore I think it had a bit more potential to grow as its service itself was growing. What that looks like for this year, I'm not entirely sure. And I think for Netflix, it's a bit cheeky, but I've read that they are now being very cautious in terms of what they provide or don't provide around their subscriber numbers. I think there was a part of their profit releases and all of that, they had to divulge some information. Now I think they're trying to hold back on it, which in my simple mind thinks, okay, are they really, really suffering? But that seems to be coming down. So will the money that people are saving from that, will that be pumped back into cinema? Personally, I'm not so sure, because every other friggin' price of cost of living is going up. So if I've got any free money, it's probably going to go into our bloody energy bills, which are just crazy. They're crazy. Council to everything is going up, and even insurances and stuff. You have to kind of fight through and just not necessarily renew, but negotiate, haggle, move to someone else, do all that stuff. So I don't think the money will necessarily be going back in to the cinema. Also, ticket prices, and this was another thing on the old stats. I'll see if I can find that piece. So the average, again, apologies for international listeners, but the only information I have to hand is the UK ticket prices, but it may form a bit of a decent benchmark or comparison to whatever you may have in your part of the world. But 2023, the average ticket price was £7.92. So I guess that's across probably obviously as many cinema chains that could feed in. It's probably across, but I'm assuming it's blended child adult rate, concessions, etc. All I could say is if I was paying that price at my cinema, I'd be over the bloody moon, because I'm paying nearly double that. Unless I do, like I say, one of the Meerkat things, or we go and see a re-released film or a film that's been out a while, then it will come down. Some of them like $2.50 or a $5, a bit of a rare event. But a normal ticket is going to cost me, not that I'm in London, but it feels like bloody London prices, about 15 pounds. So just after the 2020, they dropped to £6.75, and then crept up since. I don't know if there was a bit just trying to entice people originally to come back to the cinema, but there's nothing that, I don't know, incentivizing when I look at those numbers. But if you've got you've got a family, and so that is a blended number, so you're not going to be paying, set on average £70.92 for your lot, for your mob, and then you've got the food. On occasion, I'm a cheapskate, and I'll just bring my pick a mix from bloody Tesco's or a supermarket or whatever, so I don't get completely pillaged when I remember, and when I can be prepared. So then I kind of look at it and I think, what can cinemas do anymore? The prices, like I said, are the most they've ever been on average. Even there's some promotions underway, so I don't know if this is the same at your cinemas, but there seems to be quite live streaming of events. I think maybe Taylor Swift. I don't know if her stuff was pushed through. Certainly some music artists. Certainly some opera and other stuff. None of which I've ever been to, but I guess it's not a bad if it's going to be cheaper than going to London, traveling and then paying a London ticket. I'm basing it on some of those events being in London or maybe other capitals, just based on what they are. But are they really drawing in the crowds? I'm not entirely sure that they would, but I might be wrong. Maybe it's a really niche thing that people jump on. Personally, I'm happy. I'll go back to see an older film at a cheaper price. I think that's they did a bit more of that. I'd head along. I think Ghostbusters recently. I don't know if it was just for a day off the back of the anniversary. Is it the 40th anniversary? I'm not on the head for mathematics. But yeah, hopefully that was, those tickets were a reduced price and not, a modern film price, because that would be insane. But yeah, maybe that's another way they can kind of draw people in. Otherwise, inevitably they just need to continue to adapt. So, otherwise surely cinemas are gonna perish. And I think, it sounds a bit negative. I think if I were to spin it around a little bit, perhaps history can give us some confidence and a bit of positivity that they will survive. If you think back, cinema came before home video, and I think when home video came along, VHS, Betamax or whatever, they've survived through that. And then at the time of VHS, and then beyond, video piracy, they survived that, and that video piracy obviously then moved from physical tape piracy to online piracy in more recent decades, and they've got through a pandemic. So maybe it's not all gloomy. But yeah, I'd be interested to know anyone's thoughts. Sorry for the bit of the geek off with the friggin' numbers, but do you go to the cinema? Do you do you see there's a future for cinema? If you do go to the cinema, what kind of stuff do you check out? I'd just be genuinely interested to hear people's views. So if you have a chance, get behind that keyboard or on that little mobile keyboard, and let me know in the comments. That would be awesome.
Go where you wanna go, call when you wanna call.
Get the lowest price ever at Radio Shack on the most powerful transportable cellular phone system. Just $7.99 when you sign up with Radio Shack's authorized cellular phone carrier.
Go where you wanna go.
There's nothing else to buy, and it's ready to go wherever you go.
Call when you wanna call.
Use in your car, or go portable and take it along. Radio Shack's complete transportable cellular phone system. Just $7.99 only at Radio Shack, the technology store.
I have to be the slowest ever person at completing video games, and that's when I do complete them. I just get distracted, I move on to other stuff. But the game I knew I had to wait my way through, and I completed the other night, a couple of nights ago, Silent Hill 2. I should point out it's the remakes on the PS5, and got through it. and some stats. It's going to be a bit of a stat heavy episode, this. So let me, if you hate the stats and want a bit less of it, let me know in the comments. But certainly for today, for Silent Hill 2, it took me 11 hours and 33 minutes. I don't know why on my scribbles I put 33 limbs. 33 minutes, I'm sure. I'm a shorthand, which I think is an okay-ish time. It was no like speed run. But I'll continue with the stats. I walked, ran, I didn't do any swimming. There was no swimming in the game. So I used my legs for 64 kilometres of movement. Some of that probably, forwards, going between areas. Some bit back and forth as I was absolutely petrified by some of the monsters. But 64 kilometres, crazy. I attempted to open 297 doors that were locked. Not good, is it? My memory is so bad that I had to check the map, and again this is across the full 18 and a half hours. I checked the map 908 times. Clearly I've got no sense of direction. I thought, bloody hell, that's quite a few. My chosen weapon was the steel pipe, which I used a lot more than the guns. I'll probably come on to that in a second as to why. Probably an obvious response. I took down 342 enemies. I'm guessing that includes the bosses, but quite happy with that. It's kind of cleaning the world up a little bit, albeit no spoilers. More in my mind. And Windows broken. 121. So you need to. It probably sound like a complete cretinous vandal, but you have to break the windows quite often to see whether or not there's like ammo or medicine, little syringes to kind of heal you up. None of the bad stuff in the syringes, but so you need to break a few windows, shop fronts, typically cabinets, and vehicles would be the main combination. So a lot of windows broken. So some stats. There was loads more stats. There's 2 pages of stats when you complete it, which I kind of geeked off on even. But my experience of the game, I've got to say, I was moaning like a moaning myrtle initially. I did a stupid, silly YouTube short about the collision detection, which I still think is a bit off for particularly that first part of the game, where you can literally shuffle, dodge, and if you're by a wall or a car, your body just goes into it. And at the time I was just like, I think this is screwed, but equally I've heard this game's a bit trippy, so is it a bit of the latter? But no, the collision detection for that first part is not good, but the game, it's settled down and it sucked me in a great way. A nice, I'd say, a bit of a gentle build up, and I was probably expecting a bit more. Not as many enemies. I thought it'd be more of a kind of a suspenseful thing, and there is a lot of suspense in there, but there's quite a few enemies that jump out, and they do jump out and they make you jump, but far more than I was expecting. So that was quite a pleasant thing. I had more things to take out, and like I say, make the world a better place. A fairly narrow set of weapons, I would have thought, compared to some of the other survival horrors, but I guess it was a reissue, a revamp, so maybe it would have made sense to add stuff in. And equally, even though there weren't many, it suited me fine. You had I think you had a bit of a wooden stick to start with, like a plank, so you felt like a wrestler, and then you got the steel pipe, and then the pistol, and then the shotgun, and then the rifle. I think that's it. So that's more than enough. And to be honest, there's other games where you get so many weapons. I'm like, I don't even know which one's the best one. Like the Resi Evil 4, picking on that one. I love that game, but there's so many things you can buy from the merchant and the upgrades. And this was I quite like this, just simple. You've just got a handful of weapons, and you just go with what you got. You go with your gut instincts, and obviously the view is that as you go through, the weapons towards the end obviously going to be a bit more powerful, a bit more suited for the harder bosses or harder enemies. But that said, I didn't have the difficulty ramped up, I was worried that I was going to run out of ammo. It's a general thing with me in these survival horrors. I think, oh, bloody hell, I don't want to run out. So I was too cautious. I think I'll play it differently next time, because for most of the game, I was just trying to dodge, run through, use a bit of a melee kind of weapon, because I didn't want to have to then backtrack if I was save, if I was running low. So yeah, I played that, a bit of a lesson on me. Having done the game now, I think I would play it a bit differently next time. The final bosses, I won't go into any spoilers or stuff, but I found the last few okay to beat. And again, I didn't have the difficulty ramped up, but most of them I managed to do first time. The final boss I did, there's 3 parts to it, and I did that pretty. So it wasn't even really breaking a sweat. You're in quite a big bit of space in this arena to work with, so you don't feel too cornered. They are quick, but you don't feel too cornered. And it took a bit of time. But I kind of got through it. But there was, and it's not a spoiler, but there's an earlier boss, funnily enough, called Eddie, and you come across him a few times in the game, but you meet him in a meat locker, like an abattoir, and the visibility, and it gets worse as you go through it, is pretty dire. It seems like a smaller thing. When you do see him, he's on you, like he shoots you or grabs you pretty quickly. I think I did that one twice, 2 or 3 times before beating him. And I'll be honest, that time I was a little worried, thinking, okay, is this felt like a ramp up? Are the other bosses going to be quite as bad as this? And I'm not a great gamer. I love playing games, obviously, but I'm not a great gamer. But that was tough. Was it tough compared to? I mean, I've done Metroid Dread, and some of those. I mean, the last boss there took me forever to get through, but I did it. So none of them were of the scale of that. That was just like, I don't know, like a Rubik's puzzle with a control trying to get through. It was just like the ultimate test for me doing that other game. But yeah, this Eddie guy was harder than this Ed, but we got through him. Puzzles were tough, really tough. I thought, maybe I'm just an idiot, but I had standard mode on for the puzzles, and I won't lie, there's a few times I have no idea what is kind of facing me. I had all the parts to work through the puzzle, all the clues, but I just couldn't piece them together. So I will not lie, I did reach out to Google a few times, and it's just like, otherwise the 18.5 hours would have been like, I don't know, it wouldn't have passed. I'd still be playing it. But the plot itself was pretty bloody gripping. I've still no real idea of what actually happened. Every time I thought, oh, maybe it's this and that, it wasn't. So I think I've got a bit of an inkling. I know there's different endings, because when it came up with the stats, and I'd read about this before, there's different endings depending on how you play the game. So I think I'd quite like to do that, and see what other, hopefully I generate a different ending. I generated, is it the leave ending? I won't go into details of what that is or means, but that is the most popular of the endings. So I think the first time people do it, it's the most popular. So yeah, I'll go back. I think the question I'd ask if anyone is still listening, I do have the HD collection of Silent Hill on the Xbox. So I think I can play that on the Xbox Series X. So any recommendations of any other Silent Hill games to play, be it on that collection or any other ones, then please let me know. And since then, the day after completing it, which I think was last night, I had to clean my soul. And clean my soul by playing a game that required limited to no brain power whatsoever, and that was the Power Wash Simulator. On the PlayStation. I think I've got it through one of the old PlayStation, talking of subscriptions, I think it's the PlayStation subscription. So I was cleaning the yard, cleaning the garden, cleaning the fence, and I just needed that. I don't know if other people were the same, but after playing a game for quite some time, I don't have loads of times, I wasn't even really playing other games around Silent Hill 2. I was just straight on it, and I was loving it. I didn't really want to play anything else. If I do, then I'm probably not going to complete it. So it was full focus on Silent Hill 2. But Power Wash now, and I'm now thinking, what am I going to play next? We'll see. I'll let you know on the next episode. Another stuff I've been watching and listening to, it's probably going to be quite a quick segment, this. The thing which I think I hinted at during the intro that I've been watching on Apple TV is Slow Horses. And it's absolutely amazing. I'm probably the only one person in the bloody world that hasn't seen it, but high level kind of overview of it is it's all centered around MI5, and there's a smallish team within MI5 that almost been kind of discarded for stuff that they haven't done, or they've done badly, or they've been tainted with, some of them quite wrongly, and they're put in a separate building to the main headquarters called Slough House, and they're known collectively as the Slow Horses. And the leader of this unit, Gary Oldman, everyone knows he's a cracking actor, but he is superb in this, absolutely superb. Just the funniest one-liners, the funniest little narratives, the way he looks, the way he kind of farts during most conversations, or says something disgusting. You can almost smell him coming off the screen. It's crazy. You've got I think the other two, well-known people. You've got Jonathan Pryce in there, who plays the dad of one of the people in the team, and he is great. And he was in the MI5 before. His character was in the MI5 before, so he mentors his son a little bit. And you've got I think things kind of move around. There's someone as a senior person within MI5, but you've got Kristen Scott Thomas, and she again is fantastic. The other people, and I'm not that attuned with a lot of telly, to me they were new. Whether or not they would have appeared on other stuff, surely, because they are awesome actors, absolutely fantastic. I watched the first season a while ago. I got distracted by other stuff. I probably would say a while ago, last year before, maybe. The subscription went, and then more recently, like a numpty, I found out I can actually I think it's a trial. So I get 6 months of it through my bank. There was like a voucher, so I was like, right, let's get back on there. And I'm pleased I did. So now I'm kind of crunching through. I've just finished season 3. I think season 4 is out, and so I'll be checking that out. But yeah, really, really, really good fun. Plenty of action. Plenty, the dialogue. It's just hilarious, and yeah, nice to see the twists. I've spent a lot of time in London, working in London, so a lot of the landmarks and the places, and even the train stations where some of these things happen, are quite well, known to us. It's hopefully it's all fictitious, but just seeing it just adds a bit of extra nicety, if that's a bloody word, to the proceedings. Just to be able, it makes it more relatable to what I'm watching. So yeah, I'd recommend that if you can watch it. I think there's a few other things on Apple TV. I think there's like that Tetris series. It's getting better and better. Is it The Morning Show, which I watched a bit of, which didn't really float my fancy that much. But there's not as much content on there as some of the others, arguably because it's probably a newer service. But it hasn't got certainly hasn't got the catalogue of a Netflix. But yeah, worth checking out Slow Horses. And then finally, it's a band that I do absolutely bloody love. I do get all their albums, albeit a lot of them, I wonder why I've got them. They're just not always for me, and I end up harping back to the original albums that they put out. So yeah, the band's Primal Scream. My favourite albums from them: Vanishing Point, Screamadelica, the blues one, which I always get it wrong. Is it Don't Give Out but Give In? Something. I think it's the one that came after. I think came after Screamadelica, maybe before Vanishing Point. Nice little blues album, superb. They've released a new album last month or so. Well, I've come across it in the last month. Hopefully, it hasn't been out longer than that. Called Come Ahead, and it's a bit of a grower. I'm trying to think how best to. It's a kind of few little rocky songs on there. Not rocky as in Rocky Balboa, but like rock tunes, but then overlaid with some bit of gospel. David Holmes, I don't know if he produced it or provided some of the tracks that got the whole thing going, but some nice kind of rhythm, drum, bass Like they're pretty freaking awesome. Some of the samples are good, but there's some on there and a couple of songs where it's like a monologue, not like poetry, but someone, I guess, argue maybe it is a poem, but someone kind of talking or saying a few words, and I find that a bit, never kind of floats my boat. So it's a bit hit and miss. I've listened to it probably about 4 times, and with each listen, I'm like, yeah, I've got a bit more respect for it. The first time I listened, as well as being a bit annoyed by those monologue-y bits, I did feel it was slightly overproduced. There was just a lot going on, and it sounds a bit odd. I play the guitar, and sometimes I like to detangle some of the noises and some of the tracks, and it was just like, it was a bit overwhelming, and I was just like, oh, but now I've got my head around it. It's not like that of every track. The opener is a super song, but it's very, very multi-tracked, very, very well produced. But now I've got a bit used to it. I do think it's great. But at the beginning, it was just a bit of a barrage of noise. So probably haven't really sold that one. I think if you're into Primal Scream, then definitely check it out. If you listen to any Primal Scream, before, then again, it's worth having a quick squiz at. But equally, if you haven't come across Primal Scream, then my recommendation would be go back to an album like Screamadelica and Vanishing Point, because they are solid, and I think they're perhaps more appealing than an album like this. But let me know your thoughts. Anyone else into this kind of weird music that I like? Say weird music, they're fairly successful. They've been going long enough. Good old Glaswegian band. Hit me up in the comments. I think that rounds us off, guys and girls. Hope you liked it. As always, hit me up in the comments. Always a pleasure to hear from you. Thanks to everyone that's been listening, subscribed, liked, whatever. Even if you give me a few seconds via listening to it on Spotify or Apple, then it's really, really appreciated. I still think that the likes of Spotify don't make it that straightforward to comment, albeit it's for a lot of folk it's quite an accessible way of listening to stuff, because you can listen to it when you're out and about, and or you can download it on your phone, and you can pop it in your car and all that stuff. So thanks to everyone, regardless of how you listen. I guess thank you especially to those people that have listened to it on another format and then bounce back onto YouTube to leave a comment. That is just like kindness personified. So huge thank you. As always, I don't think anyone's taken me up on the offer yet. There's been a little back and forth with a few folk. If anyone wants to chuck in a silly little advert, or a clip of an old advert or something they've made up, doesn't have to be high fidelity, as I say every week. But equally something that will just break up the podcast a bit and make sure that people will listen to a little less of my monotone voice. That would be cool, and I'll chuck you a badge for sure. And maybe a little something else, a retro ed high five. We'll see. But over to the cretin who is Bootleg John for the outro. Cheers all.
Do not forget to dislike and unsubscribe and all that uncool stuff. And by the way, the YouTube algorithm can go and kiss my old sprayed ass.